Okay, so we've done the aggregate demand curve, and now what we're going to do is we're going to talk about aggregate supply. Okay, and the aggregate supply curve is at some level a lot like the normal supply curve, just like how aggregate demand is a lot like just demand, but it's also different in some very important ways. Okay, aggregate supply it shows us the total quantity of final goods and services that will be produced at various price levels. However, there's one big difference, and that is between these things, and that is that the time horizon makes a difference. Okay, so time horizon meaning the length of time. That we're interested in. Or asking about. Okay, so if we're talking about a very long time horizon, then we are in what's known as the long run. But if we're talking about sort of the immediate effects, then we're going to be in what's known as the short run. Okay, and we're going to start off by talking about the long run today, and we'll talk about the short run in the next lesson. Okay, so in the long run, there's only so much stuff that can be produced. Okay, we're saying that what we can produce, and it depends on the amount of labor, capital, natural resources, and the level of technology. Okay, so in the long run, what we are capable of producing is a function of labor, capital, natural resources, and technology. It doesn't matter what the prices are. This is talking about like how much stuff can we possibly produce. And so what this looks like on our graph, whoops, got my axes wrong, is this. Right? Where LRAS is the long run aggregate supply. Okay? And what this is saying is that an economy's long run potential GDP is only a function of labor, capital, natural resources, and technology. Okay? That's the only thing it depends on. It doesn't depend on anything else, right? Not price level at all, which is why it's a vertical line. Okay, if I'd drawn these things straighter, you'd notice that it was perfectly vertical. Okay? And so there's moving along the curve, that's true. The price level can change all at once, but that doesn't change the maximum potential amount that the economy can produce at any given time. Okay? How many pieces of paper something costs does not in any way determine how much stuff we can produce. Okay? Now, there are 4 factors that shift the long-run aggregate supply curve. Now these are changes in population, capital stock, natural resources, or technology. Okay, so let's go through some of these real quick, and we'll wrap up this week's lesson here. Okay, so changes in population will certainly affect the amount of stuff that we can produce. Right? If we have something like the bubonic plague, or let's do a positive one first. Okay, so let's say that the rate of childbirth in the U.S. quadruples. Right, so now all of a sudden there are just more people in the U.S. Then the long-run aggregate supply curve will shift to the right. Okay, or we could think of if the U.S. were to completely open its borders and allow anyone and everyone to immigrate here, then we would have more people within the U.S. borders, presumably, and the long-run aggregate supply curve would shift out to the right. Okay, now I should be careful to note that this isn't saying that we should open borders. That's not what I said at all. It's also not an argument that we should close borders, right? This is just a statement that says if there are more people within the United States, then more stuff can be produced within the United States. Okay, that's all it says. Okay, and conversely, it says that if Donald Trump successfully builds his wall, and deports a whole bunch of people back to wherever they came from, then we would go ahead and we would shift the long-run aggregate supply curve to the left. Okay, which again just says that with fewer people, we can produce fewer things. Okay, that doesn't say anything about whether we should or should not do it. It just says if this, then that. Okay, it's a very positive statement. There's no normative analysis there. Okay, we could also model the bubonic plague in medieval Europe. So when the Black Death, as it's sometimes known, struck Europe, and I think it was something like a third of the population died, economists would just model that as a shift left of the long-run aggregate supply curve. Okay, if we change the capital stock, so as we develop new capital or as we buy more capital or anything like that, the long-run aggregate supply curve will shift out to the right. Okay, and if capital is somehow destroyed, it shifts out to the left. When we decided to start fracking, that increased the amount of natural gas or oil, I can't remember which one it is, that increased our supply of natural resources. So we model that as just a rightward shift of long-run aggregate supply. And at the same time, changes in technology also shift long-run aggregate supply. So when Al Gore blessed us with the internet, as Prometheus did with fire, long-run aggregate supply shifted to the right. Okay, so these are the four factors that shift long-run aggregate supply. If you notice, there's none of these are really sort of controllable, right? So you and I, or President Obama, or Congress, or anything like that, we can kind of change population, we can kind of change natural resources, but it's really hard to make a big change in long-run aggregate supply, right? These things tend to just kind of happen. Long-run aggregate supply tends to just keep shifting to the right as all of these things increase, on their own, right? There's nothing that we can really do to actively manage the long-run aggregate supply curve, okay? So in the next lesson, we'll be going through some more work with this, and we'll do short-run aggregate supply as well.